Hello. uh, Another big idea here. And I'll say off the bat, I'm not sure if I'm going to wrap it all up, but you know what? Let's say that I am. It is quite a large, ambitious idea to share. I'm aiming to connect many things together. But what I've discovered in the past few videos, I am quite new at this, is that it, especially upon listening back, like after I post it and I listen to it, I'm like, oh wow, this is a lot more cohesive than I thought it would be. So perhaps I can trust that that's what's going to happen. I guess first I will reflect upon this and see if there's a title I can attach to this right away. It's not coming to me, so we will start talking about it first. It has to do with metaphysics. It has to do with metaphysics. And here's a statement, perhaps, that humans are not scientists, humans are metaphysicists. Humans live by metaphysics. Maybe a different title is like, you don't see with your eyes, you see with your understanding. Here's a thought experiment. Currently you look at me, and maybe after you've seen a few videos, you can see it's like, oh, it's that guy. It's James, maybe. If this is your first video, then you say, who's that? I'll listen with skepticism, right? Or let's say, for example, you're my brother or something, and you're watching. You're like, oh, hey, that's the person I've known for decades. So I raise that small example to have you think, if that is what you see, if you see me and you see your brother, then are you seeing that with your eyes? Or are you seeing that with something else? And I propose that you see, I think it's quite objectively true, even though we will talk about that too, whether objectivity is valid. It's objectively true that you do not see with your eyes. You see with yourself. Perhaps you see with yourself. So we'll start there. And I'm reflecting upon, I will talk about metaphysics from a high level. What metaphysics is? Metaphysics is the assumptions and the view, your understanding of reality, the understanding of reality upon which you base the proposals, the hypotheses, the suggestions to explain the world upon. Like, what are the principles you're basing your theories upon? Your scientific theory, for example, science itself is the current view of science is based upon a certain set of metaphysical principles that we assume is true. Off the top of my head, just to make a guess, or to state what I think are the scientific metaphysical principles are, objective evidence is paramount. And peer review is what validates the truth. And subjective evidence, subjective experience, cannot be accepted as scientific proof. And ideas like this, and perhaps we can come back to that. But what I've been reflecting on is the idea that the metaphysics we currently live with has not always been the metaphysics we live with. Other ideas that I think come from this time, I've traced it back to the 16th century, 1550 or so. So we'll talk about this. The current metaphysics we live with is actually not the most modern form of understanding of reality we have. I propose, what I've observed is that the metaphysics we currently live with happened during the scientific revolution back in the 16th century, and it never really shifted, even though it kind of moved into some other more modern ideas, maybe in the 70s or 80s. When I talk about that, I'm talking about relativism. And I'd like to talk about that. And by the way, the idea I'm sharing right now was greatly inspired by a certain book I heard, an audiobook I heard on a channel called You Are Creators. I will link it. But I find it absolutely fascinating and thought-provoking. So I'll talk through this. So doing some research on this topic, there was a scientific revolution back in the 18th century, and you can think of that metaphysically. Again, metaphysics is like how you see reality. The principles upon which you base your understanding of reality. Right. The scientific revolution was a mass transition away from a God-centric understanding of the world to an objective-centric understanding of the world. A science using the principles upon which science was based. So before the scientific revolution, before the scientific revolution, this was how we understood the solar system looked. It was an Earth-centric model. And you might, this Earth-centric model is just the scientific view, the scientific surface of the metaphysical core of the times, right? Because there's a reason why, I believe when Galileo said, hey, because based on my sun-centric model of the world, I predict the planet should be here at this time. And then he called all the astronomers over to look into his telescope and say, hey, look, isn't it's there, right? That must mean my model is true. My sun-centric model of the world is true. And the astronomers said, I don't see what you're talking about. They literally could not see it in the telescope because the paradigm through which they were looking at the world would not allow them to admit that is true. The reason being that so much of just their understanding of reality itself rests upon this model. This model is not just one where the earth is in the center, but it is also one where everything is in divine order. The humans are at the center of the meaning of reality. The universe was created for humans. And thus, it makes absolute sense that the Earth is in the center because the universe was created for us. And then this was before Newton discovered that gravity is what moved the planets around around the sun, and so they said, of course, all of the different bodies of the heavens travel in perfect concentric circles because that is just what sounds most beautifully divine, orderly. And actually, at this time, I found, if you ever look at a channel called Welch Labs, he talks about the history of this. And what's fascinating about this is this model is actually incredibly accurate. Within fractions of a degree, you can actually you can map everything that moves across the night sky. But then some scientists, some people who insisted upon a different understanding of they had different metaphysical principles. They wanted to use objective observation as the basis of their sense of reality. They proposed and eventually succeeded in proving to the world that the sun was at the center of this map. And what collapsed was not just this scientific understanding, but a whole metaphysical paradigm. One where humans were at the center. And I mean, you are aware of the famous saying, and this is actually much later time-wise, but metaphysically, it's just it's the sun. It's what resulted. Nietzsche traveled around Europe and saw that Europe was becoming secularized. the church, just as the Earth was no longer the center of the solar system, the church was no longer the center of European culture. And so Nietzsche wrote in his book, God is dead, God remains dead, and we have killed him. And this is a major metaphysical transition we made. And I was looking into what ended up happening. So okay. There were certain principles that people of that time lived by when the Earth was the center of the universe. For example, divine order. The whole world moves in clockwork because God is in control, and of course things move in perfect concentric circles because everything is perfect. And then the understanding of what is true. Well, we don't have to look at what is true, because what we can understand is true is what is ideal. That was their paradigm of what truth was. But then you move into rationalism, and I asked ChatGPT about some things that yes, it was the other window, so let's find that. There we go. So some things that changed in that the scientific revolution was also largely a cultural revolution, which you are still feeling the effects of today. How you understand truth right now comes from this, right? Metaphysically, the Earth was at the center of existence at the time, but suddenly the Earth was just one of the planets, and we were just hurtling through space as one of the many planets, and we were no longer like this divine being, right? It was no longer about design, but see, evolution branched from this from the demotion of like a holy source of truth to the observation of objective evidence. We moved into we were able to find the theory of evolution, and humanity became self-defined, as Nietzsche also wrote. He wrote about the Übermensch, right? Let's see if there are other things here. Yes, so there are many different big overarching principles that lost their power and made way for objective science. And some other ideas that I can think of that are related to this are essentially the metaphysical principles based behind Newton's laws of physics, cause and effect, equal and opposite reaction, like action and reaction, and yes, the primacy of measurement, and like how measurement is king. Like there is an objective reality, and we can get it through measurement, right? And I hold that pretty much like just as in the book that I talked about with scientific revolutions, there has been no need for a cultural revolution ever since the scientific revolution, and so there has been no need to reprogram the cultural zeitgeist, the cultural understanding of how to evaluate truth. And so we still carry the ideals of the scientific revolution, I hold. Let's see, what else here? However, so those were huge breakthroughs that were had in the 16th, 17th, 18th century. But science doesn't stand still. So I'll continue sharing with you my understanding of the metaphysical history of mankind. And a big transition happened in the metaphysical understanding of reality when Einstein proposed his theory of relativity. So a large tenet of Newton's theory is that space and time are absolute. We live in a clockwork universe where anywhere I am, you can tell me and I can tell you exactly where I am and exactly how fast or exactly when things happened, right? That is the Newtonian understanding of reality. However, Einstein said, no, that is incorrect. It is all relativistic. It all depends on who the observer is. And the connecting thread is the speed of light. So the more I look into at least these quotes attributed to Einstein, the more I see that Einstein wasn't so much a rationalist. So a theory can be proved by experiment. You can use the evidence to prove the theory, but no path leads from experiments to the birth of a theory. Albert Einstein. This suggests to me that he says, as there's the quote by Elon Musk, it is best to think from first principles. In other words, back out of the science. Don't think so much about objective rational proof, and think about the principles you are thinking from. In other words, become a metaphysicist, become a philosopher almost. Here are some other quotes by Einstein. We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. This is another quote saying, if you simply attempt to solve your metaphysical problem using rational measurements, you will never be able to escape your metaphysical error. Remember, that's what Einstein was able to use to resolve our conundrum. He said, the principle we are basing our theory upon is incorrect. If we change that, then we can solve this. Here's another one. Reality is merely an illusion, albeit a very persistent one. These would be the words of someone who is very aware of what humans are doing when we are creating a reality. We, as his theory suggests, as his theory of relativity suggests, there is no objective reality here. There is merely observations. And at a higher level, there is an objective reality. It's just not the one that we currently observe. So to say what I mean by that, what Einstein discovered in the theory of relativity is the objectivity of reality can be tied together with this fundamental speed limit of the universe, which is exemplified in the speed of light. But outside of that, everything is relative. Outside of that, you must reference that one common thread to know exactly what happened. And here's another quote that I found by Einstein. The more I learn about physics, the more I am drawn to metaphysics. By the way, that is also something that happened. Okay, so the reason I bring this up, and I also think about how much physics changed after Einstein's contributions, because Einstein's contributions were actually very largely in this way of conducting physics, which was theory first, thought experiments, and INTP, very much like a gathering of all of the data, and then a questioning of the principles you are using to view this data, and the creation of a lens that is able to provide a cohesive story that no longer has any logical fallacies, logical errors in it. So, in a way, that ties into how this is about INTPs. What I'm talking about here is almost, if you are an INTP listening, you likely will find what I'm talking about very, like you can see the step-by-step progress here. So people talk about how physics changed completely after Albert Einstein, because Einstein showed us imagination is greater than knowledge. Physics before Einstein was about careful and precise measurement of reality, creating our understanding of truth. And we're able to create formulas that explain things, and we don't have to question our principles. We can simply be rational and just measure better. But after Einstein, we were able to realize, perhaps science isn't so much science after all. Perhaps science also includes being a philosopher and questioning the principles by which you are conducting your experiments. Now, the video that I'm going to link talks about how there have been some pockets of cultural revolutions resulting from this transition in science. So the movement away from the church into rationalism, from the scientific revolution, that, like, if you look around you, I view that is the water you swim in. If you were here before the scientific revolution, you wouldn't be able to avoid it. You would be swimming in the water of the church being the center of the meaning of your life. And after rationalism, there was actually a splintering of what the meaning of your life was, and we continue to splinter, of course. But one additional branch that happened now with the discovery of the theory of relativity is people took the metaphysical implications of the theory of relativity, and they looked out into the world and they applied it wherever else they could. And one of the places where that was applied is, and I wonder about the timeline of this, but Jung's work in psychological types. Jung even writes in the book about psychological types where he says, so Freud, what he observed was Freud wanted an objective truth that explains, like, the population level understanding of psychology. But Jung said that's important. However, I cannot, like, after conducting my practice and observing the variety among individuals, I cannot avoid the subjective factor. I cannot avoid this thing that we can call personality. And so he wrote about it in Types. And personality is very much, like the rational view that Freud held, you can view as like physics before Einstein. He said, what we observe in the population using results is blah. But Jung said that there is a subjective factor also at play here among the individuals, and each individual will view things a different way, and they will react differently, and this is how we can somewhat codify that, and that's what the types were. And relativity continues into, like, moral relativity, and like, the more global the world becomes, the more you start to question, like, oh, well, Japanese people, when they eat soup, or when they drink soup, they lift up the bowl. And Korean people, when they drink soup, they spoon it into their mouth. Which one's right? Well, like, for something that is not so incendiary as that, you can say, well, it depends on where you're from, right? And these things that were held as, like, the moral truth become cultural idiosyncrasies. It's like, oh, interesting. There you could see the truth in both ways. That is, like, the metaphysical application of relativity outside of science. And this video talks about how, like, this seems to be a common occurrence that happens in science. A scientific discovery is made, and then the metaphysical implications of that is applied elsewhere. Now, we are almost currently in the cultural revolution of relativism, where some people see it as, like, the solution to so many problems, and I feel like it's unavoidable, because it is, like, the next understanding of truth. And other people resist it, and they wish to hold on to an objective absolute truth. This reminds me of I'm tying many things together here. This reminds me of the model of spiral dynamics. You can review this whenever you'd like. I don't think I'm going to go through all of it, but I am going to talk about how Oh, I'll start at red. So red was so there's a period when you like if you look at like feudal Japan, feudal Europe, there was a period when power ruled, when people were roaming marauders and they invaded and pillaged villages, and whatever like the powerful are who rule the world. That's red, right? And then so like this model, by the way, spiral dynamics, is a model talking about how generally what we have seen like humankind evolve through. We move through these different ways of defining what is valuable in the world. We have seen that cultures around the world, they all tend to move through these stages. So the ones that I'm going to talk about here are blue, truth and order. This is stability, law, organized religion. So so actually blue and orange is how you can think about traditional what do you call it? Classical physics, which is like we have an orthodox school that or like the objective results are exactly all that matters, and it doesn't like there is no subjective factor here. But after Einstein, we were introduced to how the subjective factor could play a role, and it is something that is valuable even in science. And this here is what you can also think of as like the hippie movement. You can think of like the hippie movement is almost non-denominational peace. That was what it preached. Like I'm not going to stand for a certain church and say either you're with me or against me. I'm going to stand for peace and love without a denomination, and understand that even if you have a different culture or a different belief system than me, we can still agree that that is valuable. And in order for that to be acceptable to the human mind, the idea of relativism must also be included in the metaphysics of the human mind. And I feel that we are still in the transition period of accepting relativism as a human metaphysical foundation right now. So to recap so far, I've spanned almost like 500 years of Western history, Western scientific history here, starting from pre the scientific revolution, where it was Earth-centric and God-centric. And then we moved into the scientific revolution, and objectivity and an absolute truth became like the metaphysical like the zeitgeist of the world. And then now we're moving into a relativistic time, which, I mean, this has been going on for a long time, like 70 years, which you can almost say is like, it has been paralleled by Einstein's theory of relativity in science. And then now, in the modern age, something very, like the newest thing, which has its own metaphysical implications, has been introduced, which of course is quantum mechanics, right? And this idea of I don't know if I have too many good visual aids here, but I will see if I think of any. But quantum mechanics is the idea that observation, in a way, observation defines reality. Observation defines reality, and before observation, reality is not defined. And when two disparate objects have not interacted before, then they exist to each other as a probabilistic wave, right? So with this understanding, we remove yet another metaphysical principle from classical physics, which is that it is possible to observe something objectively. And what quantum mechanics suggests is, no, it's not. It's not. The observation intertwines you with the object being observed, and that's also related to this idea of entanglement. And entanglement is the idea that when two things interact, they are forever intertwined. You can think of it almost like if I do 2 times x, and then I move 2 and x really far apart, and then I say 2 times x equals 8, the x will automatically say, yeah, I've been 4. Of course I've been 4. That's the idea. Like the times is like entanglement, and what this suggests, or what this has, it like, so if you know the one of the latest Nobel Prizes, Bell's theorem, it proved that this entanglement principle cannot be explained classically. It said entanglement is actually what's happening. Where so here's another example. Like what has been observed is you have a pair of things, and there is this principle called spin, and if one is up, then the other must be down. So you entangle it and you do not observe it. So right now they are both not up or down. They are all of those things possibly. And what has been observed is when you observe one and it's up, the other one you automatically know is down, and it acts as if it's always been down. And what this suggests is that locality itself, and by extension even time and space, are not fundamental to reality. Entanglement suggests that reality is one way you can think of it as reality is already connected. Reality is always aware of itself, and it also throws into, like, if there's no time, if time and space are not fundamental to reality, then cause and effect can also not be fundamental reality. Like cause could be its own effect could be its own cause. Like it could happen simultaneously. And that's exactly what you observe with entanglement. When I observe one and it's up, the other is down. Oh, when did that happen? What caused that? And that the question that, or the question that question you're asking shows to you the metaphysical framework you are currently using to see the world. And it suggests to you that the metaphysical framework you're currently using is not a quantum mechanical one. It is a classical one that you're using here. And I'll take a break here to talk about how what we have seen in science is that each of these things are all useful. And the proper way perhaps to go about understanding how to use them all usefully is to integrate and expand. I mean, like, there are some things that are better explained classically, there are some things that are better explained quantum mechanically, right? That doesn't mean that you don't have to choose one or the other. That's once again a very blue stage way of thinking, to say you're either with me or against me. Instead, you can say we can coexist, instead of saying like you're either with me or against me, right? This is I'm really going for like painting this whole metaphysical picture, and I hope you enjoy it. At the very least, I think I'll find this very valuable to listen over and really solidify and help me like clarify my TI as an INTP, the logic and the lens that I have, and then also see what else this suggests, right? Any extroverted intuition. Okay, so we spanned quite a bit here. Let me gather my thoughts. So this was discovered. And by the way, when quantum mechanics was first pioneered, I mean, the only way the physicists could really like step outside of their rational mind, their Newtonian like metaphysical brain, is to look into certain ideas that help them, give them a different lens that could better represent what was happening in quantum mechanics. So, well, like Taoist and yogic ideas of oneness, like how the self, like Buddhism says the self is an illusion, and separation is, or yoga says separation is an illusion. I believe the word yoga means to connect to all. You are all, and you have the illusion. The separation is an illusion, and when you look at the world metaphysically that way, then quantum mechanics no longer becomes this weird, strange thing that happens. It just becomes obvious. Well, here's an example. So let's use right now some basic principles that can help make quantum mechanics just make basic sense. The universe is all one and always aware of each other, aware of itself, and upon interaction, it interacts with itself to be internally consistent. And so here's one particle that is either positive or negative, and here's one particle that's either positive or negative, and they are entangled, and you don't know which one is positive or negative, but upon interaction, then like their separation was always an illusion, and by connecting them, they settle into a classically observable outcome that is internally consistent. And this sort of worldview makes quantum mechanics not so weird. And there are many different like places you can look into this. By the way, I mean they've even found that time is not fundamental to reality. They've found that when you map out an interaction in a quantum interaction, if you play it forward in time or backwards in time, they're both logically consistent. And so they ask the question, like, why does time move forward, for example, right? And these are just outstanding questions. However, what I'm talking to is there are so many fun things that we thought were fundamental that quantum mechanics shows us it's possible that they're not. And then there are metaphysical implications of this that have been explored by many people outside of science. And like, I suggest to you not to dismiss that as non-scientific or as like layman like thought experiments, because that's exactly how we came up with moral relativity, or for example, like the idea of temperature and flow of fluids was expanded into the study of traffic in cars and blood and like population migration, right? Like there is the hermetic principle, as above so below, the law of correspondence. It can't be avoided that we've been using this sort of idea of analogy and correspondence to discover so many things about the world. And so when these quantum mechanical discoveries were made about reality, it's only natural to take those principles and see where else you can apply it. And one place we did apply it was, a rediscovery almost, like the idea of New Age philosophy, which is the idea of things like thought influences reality. And also, one idea I can link to you is Carl Jung's idea of synchronicity. Oh, here we go. So here's one quote. And I guess I'll define to you what synchronicity is. Or or I'll read it to you. I'll read this quote to you. Synchronicity is an ever-present reality for those who have eyes to see. Carl Jung. And I'll define to you what synchronicity is. It is a meaningful coincidence that seems to occur at like the perfect time to match with something that is that you're thinking through in your life, or some way that you are looking at the world. Now, viewed from a classical physics lens, where time and space are fundamental, where objectivity is fundamental, where where things can be measured objectively from a cause and effect explainable paradigm, that makes no sense. From a relativistic sense, it makes no sense either. But from a quantum mechanical sense, where the observer is an actor in the reaction, it makes absolute sense. From the quantum mechanical use of metaphysics, essentially, one way you can simply say this is, it proposes the idea that the observer can have an effect on the experiment, and also, I guess the pragmatic principle I can imply here is as within, so as within as without. So, and then the metaphysical implication of entanglement is that things can happen without the application of space and time, without the limitations of space and time. And, like, of course, like, what I'm talking about here is not orthodox science, quote unquote, right? But see, like, but it's very interesting to see that science has become very much of a religion, because it's possible to speak heretically, right? You can be heretical, but part of the point I'm making in everything I've talked about today is that every step of the way in this journey, in our metaphysical journey, we have never truly been conducting science. We've actually been using a metaphysical lens to explain reality. And the tool of science was merely the tool that resulted from the metaphysical principles we used during the scientific revolution. So, like, if you actually reflect upon how you live today, you lived today, I would suggest that you spent 0% of your day using science to live your life. Unless perhaps you're like you're just a science-based bodybuilder or something. Like what science am I using to decide to release this video, right? By the way, that reminds me of certain quantum mechanical principles that I think apply to my releasing of these videos here, that it would become not so reasonable in a classical metaphysical lens. The classical metaphysical lens would say, where's your proof? TESI. Classical metaphysical lens is TESI. Where is your proof that releasing YouTube videos like this would be successful? Have you seen examples? Have people conducted experiments before you and shown you that there is an audience for this, etc., etc.? The quantum mechanical lens is like this. The audience is already out there, and they are seeking to interact with my video. And when I post the video, the two halves that were already in connection with each other can now materialize into a classically visible reality. Can you hear how the quantum mechanical metaphysical lens of reality, understanding, makes taking action a lot more realistic in many more places? It reminds me of like many many somewhat mystical quotes of the past, like when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. So it's not that the teacher is the cause and the student is, or the student is the cause and the teacher is the effect. No, they are mutually interacting with one another, and you can almost say that they are not in the same in the same dimension of reality until the student just moves into that dimension, and then they can now encounter one another. And I say all this because I've found that realm, the new realm of, and of course, like a lot of the new ideas and a lot of the way people think about the new ideas, I personally find that I cannot relate and I cannot follow. But there's certain parts of it that I find absolutely true and absolutely fascinating. So I dove really deep. And what I talk about are things like reprogramming the subconscious mind, law of attraction, law of assumption, the Hermetic principles, synchronicity. I've seen these things happen in my life. And what I suggest is that, for example, there was a time when germ theory was dismissed by doctors. I think it was I forget exactly which scientist said it, but he said if doctors just washed their hands between surgeries, then we would cut down all the infections and save many lives. And then the doctor said, "What are you talking? I've never seen a germ before. Because I've never seen a germ before, I'm gonna just ignore what you just said. It's obvious that infection spread by like vapors or something, right?" And we can laugh at that now, but I suggest that perhaps one generation later, in a world that is more permeated culturally with quantum mechanics, they might say that they laugh at our insistence upon cause and effect being so black and white. Some other examples that I've thought about with this, I think there are many levels by which you can consider this, and I don't suggest that you just believe what I say, but just consider it. But things like, I think there are certain negative side effects that happen because we use the classical physics lens to explain the world. For example, I like to use the civil rights movement often as an example. But okay. Using a classical metaphysical lens, you might see this. And you might think, wow, Martin Luther King was a great man. He caused all that, because that is the classical lens. The classical lens is that nothing happens on its own, and there must be a cause for every effect. And what that creates is our current understanding of structures and how movements happened. We attribute to one person that one person worked really hard, because things don't happen on their own. The person worked really hard, and because of that person's individual effort, this thing happened. It never would have happened without him, right? I propose that is based on classical physics metaphysical lens, right? A quantum mechanical lens is more holistic. I propose that it could be more holistic, which is that you can look at this exact same picture and you can say, wow, mankind was in a fascinating mental state at this time, and it was in the air. There was a sense of like a wave function that was moving into the direction of equal rights for man. And Martin Luther King felt this movement, and he spoke to the unconscious, as Jung says, the collective unconscious, he spoke the words that were in so many people's minds, and they all resonated, and they all entered into almost like a collective resonance. They vibrated together, and that vibration became so strong that it changed the history of the United States. So that is more of a holistic view, seeing this as one collective wave function, and Martin Luther King speaking into the wave function, and the wave function resonating with him. So yes, sure, he played a visible role, but when you view it from a holistic view of the entire wave, then you can see the role that the times played, and also the state of the human psyche at the time. And that's very much a Jungian idea of the collective unconscious. So turning the mirror on myself and seeing this, which, saying that already is classical, but what I'm saying is, perhaps if you look at what we're doing right here from a quantum mechanical metaphysical lens, I'm not so much talking to you and you're not listening to me. I am merely putting words into something in some existence in the air, the times we live in. I'm vibrating at that frequency, and by allowing it to come into words, I'm speaking into the vibration frequency that you carry, and it captures your attention because you can hear yourself in it. Like, if you can't hear yourself in it, then you would have left a long time ago. But to me, this speaks to what is actually happening when people exchange ideas. And this also speaks to how movements can explode and grow so fast. It has nothing to do with people. It has everything to do with the state that they carry, and what is created when they resonate with one another. And in an instant, I can, because you can remove cause and effect here. You can talk about instant cause and effect happening simultaneously. In an instant, the movement becomes reality. It's no longer a movement. It's just what everyone thinks, because cause and effect doesn't have to happen there. It's already true. It was already carried in the collective unconscious. Someone just put words to it and made that collective unconscious conscious, and now we just all agree that that's reality. So I'm tying together many different ideas here, but I wanted to make this somewhat of a primer to show you this. You can almost think of this as like an extension to my previous video, where I question and I speak once again to a reality beyond just TESI, results, data, analysis, right? Results, data, and the past. There is more. And just like germ theory was considered just ghosts, he's like telling ghost stories. If we take the quantum mechanical lens and we apply it to reality, we might notice that there are certain things that we have dismissed before as ghosts and anomalies that are actually just things that can be explained from a quantum mechanical understanding of the world. This place where the observer is not separate from the environment, and the observation creates a reality on its own. And cause and effect is not based upon time and space, but there's a simultaneous transformation that happens between the actor and the acted, right? Exposing certain ideas like synchronicity and the collective unconscious. And merely by me voicing this, you can resonate and you can change permanently. Like I can think of like me posting this video will instantly change the entire world. I mean, who knows? But that is a possibility that becomes possible when you think about things from that lens. What was the? I could feel there was something else I want to talk about. Quantum mechanics. I'll sit here and think about it for a second. Yes, the other example I wanted to share with you was the placebo effect, for example. I mean, there are movements now which before were just considered quack science, about faith healing and like healing through essentially what you can think of what was previously thought as the placebo effect. The placebo effect was completely dismissed, and they said, okay, medicine works if you factor out the placebo effect, right? But what we've started to come around to is the power of the placebo effect. I think I looked up a study just now saying that a placebo aspirin medicine or a placebo migraine medicine works 50% as effectively as the actual migraine medicine. And there were studies in depression and stuff. And again, this is not saying either or. This is saying integrate and expand. Like, who knows how we can explain this? But to me, what it suggests is that there are many effects. And by the way, there have been discovered quantum mechanical effects in much larger realms than we thought possible. For example, there is a certain bird, I think, that uses a quantum mechanical effect to navigate south for the winter, and ideas like this. And there's just like very recent studies on how it's possible that consciousness, our ability to decide and understand this world could be based on a quantum mechanical effect. There's some study about like how it's possible that microtubules could be doing it, right? Of course, speculation, but I'm not speaking here as a scientist. I'm speaking here as a human moving through life, carrying a metaphysics to heuristically navigate my life. And what I am sharing with you is the idea that the Newtonian heuristics of navigating life can be quite slow, quite limited. Again, the TESI view of the world, like it's an infinite loop. You need to have had experience in order to get a job, and you need a job to get experience, right? That's a TESI view of the world. But there are other ways to view the world. And one of the ways is to assume that you already have the job. I can assume that I already have 1 million subscribers. And moving in that assumption, that reality can resonate with me and come into existence. And again, from a classical lens, that's not possible. There must be cause and effect. I've never seen that happen before, and so all that stuff. But from a resonance lens, from a lens of a wave function and how there's no exact position for a molecule, but everything moves, everything materializes itself to be internally consistent, then now it becomes possible. And then this explains many things that happen in the world, right? Like technology moves in such a way that it becomes hard for you to track the cause and effect. It moves almost in lockstep. Like it's like stepwise functions. and it's almost like the entire world is entrained, and like we are somewhat because of the internet and stuff. But I'm mostly just pointing to like the lenses upon which to look at the world, and I'm proposing these to you. And I personally have found a lot of value in putting on quantum mechanical lenses in how I conduct myself in life. What's fascinating about quantum mechanics and relativity is they expand what is possible. The classical lens is much more pedestrian in what it allows. And especially as an intuitive, as an INTP, I think that's a big thing that draws it to me. It allows me to just make leaps of intuition into the future. And it's just, and once again, right, like quantum mechanics suggests a more holistic view of reality, that everything is aware of everything else, and upon interaction, then things are defined, as opposed to the classical lens, which is you are just this one gear in the machine. See, like just that difference, I think, can change a lot about what you view as possible. Anything else to talk about here? I'll just outline some of the practices that I do that stem from these metaphysical principles. Like I do affirmations, and I use affirmations to assume that I already have this reality with me. I'm going to talk on a future video about how, I'll say the title now, humans are aiming animals, because that's another way to view this that makes it make a lot of logical sense. But affirmations, I use them to be able to see where I'm going. The INTP, where I'm going, because since I don't have TE, I don't have to have like a plan, right? At least that's how I see it. Reprogramming the subconscious mind, releasing negative thoughts, and just generally, after reading Psycho-Cybernetics and The Magician's Way, releasing anything that makes me say, in order for me to get my future, I need to focus on these things. I release all of that, and I simply focus on my future. And I assume it's already mine. And what I've seen is it causes me to automatically act, as these books suggest. That's what flow is. I feel like that's what flow is. And man, I've been talking for an hour, and it like me saying like I automatically move made me realize, yeah, I've been automatically moving. I have been talking all this time, and I just hope it makes sense. I know it makes sense. I know this made sense, which is really cool. But it's a very interesting thing to move from that place. To move from the place of having a target, focusing on that, knowing it's mine, and then simply acting from that place. It's effortless. It's fun. It's very easy. Energetic. I've lost 20 pounds. So I've been outlining that idea, the idea of metaphysics, and pointing out to you that you are a metaphysicist, like no matter what you are. I'll show you one more image. I think. I'll show you one more image, and then I think I'll wrap up. Model of reality. So what I'm looking for is a model. Your reality model, beliefs. Okay. I cannot find it, but I will say. Ah, yes. Okay, sure. This is pretty close. So from the top to the bottom, that's how you can think about how you conduct yourself in life. And as I said in a previous video, like your decision and words, like they're already like kind of predetermined. The only things that you allow yourself to say and decide are based on what you believe in, and like what you believe in is based on like the core beliefs, and the core beliefs are based upon how you see yourself, and how you see yourself is based upon like when you like, it's almost like when people meditate, they try and connect to this, right? That's who you are before you are you. And you know, when you go through an identity crisis, this is the part that changes. So I mean, this in a way, like I find personality science almost like, or like metaphysics, I guess you can say, quite useful and scientific. I mean, yeah, this is an identity crisis. How you view yourself is becoming called into question. And then core beliefs, you can change those. You can change all of this, but only you can only change this if you're willing to experience like metaphysical death. Like you just completely lose track of what life is. Anyways, all of this, like your actions, skills, and behavior, like, okay, an ESTJ or an ENTJ might think very differently, right? I think it's because this stuff here is linked very closely to their identity. And so this means a lot to them. But as an INTP, all this stuff, I suggest that you don't think about that as much as you think of these two. And I might even suggest you just think about this. And I bring that up because that's tied across, that is linked to the idea of the observer being a co-creator with reality. And the second idea is that yes, as an INTP, you are a lens crafter, and so work on the most fundamental lenses of your life, which is that your identity, your philosophy, the metaphysics with which you process the world. Very important, I say. Very fun. And there are many other topics that I would love to cover. There was a person that asked me about religion. You can let me know if you thought this video somewhat covers religion, because I personally view it does, but I could speak to it more directly. But I think that's everything I have to say for today. Can I even summarize this? Well, I'll summarize it by saying that I've done a metaphysical review of the history of mankind, at least from the transition into the scientific revolution. And metaphysically, it's very interesting to see that each person carries a different way to process reality, each one having their strengths and weaknesses, and not like the scientific revolution was probably the last grand transition that mankind has gone through. But since then, these revolutions have not been so mass accepted. And I outlined each one of them, like relativity's metaphysical implications, and then quantum mechanics metaphysical implications. Suggesting different lenses by which we can understand the the phenomena we observe in life, and how they can actually be explained as real things. It's just that our metaphysical lens right now decides to dismiss them as happenstance anomalies, just as was explained in Thomas Kuhn's Structure of Scientific Revolutions. A cultural revolution will only occur en masse when we enter a cultural crisis. So perhaps I'm posting this just on time so that we can better understand what we are going through. That is that for today. I cannot think of anything else. And I'm sure I will in the future, and that will become another video. So, have a great day. Bye-bye.